Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Komad. Remember me? I'm Zane. I was your AI host in 2024. It is truly a pleasure to be here again with all of you. For the past few years, Komad had received many amazing responses and became a great success thanks to the enthusiastic participation and support from you, our dedicated audience. This year, we are very excited to bring something even more meaningful and enriching. Our sessions will now feature two main segments. The first segment, called Resensi Buku, will focus on book reviews, where lecturers and students explore and share their insights, ideas, and perspectives from a book they read, which can inspire both personal and professional growth. The second segment is our main program, which will be our Komad Sessions, consisting of webinars and discussions on various topics related to education, providing opportunities to exchange knowledge, experiences, and current educational practices. Whether you are here to discover new ideas, broaden your understanding, or simply be part of an engaging learning community, we hope Komad continues to benefit and inspire all of us. Thank you and enjoy the program.
Hello, welcome to Komad 2026. I'm Norella. I am your AI host for today. I would like to go over a few things as a reminder to all audience on the etiquette of attending this webinar. First, everyone who attends to this webinar series will be given an e-certificate after each session. Therefore, do not forget to register your full name once the link for registration is open. Make sure it is typed correctly and your email address is accurate too. Only for teachers or education officers in Malaysia, please make sure you also provide your IC number. You will find the registration link is pinned in the live chat box of this YouTube channel. Second, be respectful of others. When communicating, please be polite. Foul language will not be tolerated, and audience who are rude will be taken off the webinar. And third, we'd appreciate it if you could share today's webinar with others through your social networks. Thank you for taking time to listen to this reminder announcement. See you again soon. Terima kasih.
Selamat datang, good day, and welcome to the International and Domestic Virtual Colloquium, or Komad 2026, organized by the Institute of Teacher Education International Languages Campus, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I am Ahoyenzi, and I'm the moderator for today's colloquium series entitled Human Flourishing Education, Character Formation in the Malaysia Classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on our live IBA YouTube channel for Komad 2026. The theme for this year colloquiums, Building Character Through Language Teacher Education, Pembangunan Karakter Menelusuri Pendidikan Guru Bahasa. Similar to the previous year's installment, the goal of this colloquium is to provide the space for educators all over the world to discuss, share, and exchange views with fellow educators on topics related to education and how they are transforming globally. Indeed, through this colloquium, there is plenty to learn, hence expanding our knowledge. Now, allow me to introduce our esteemed speaker for today's webinar sessions on Human Flourishing Education, Character Formation in the Malaysian Classroom. Please welcome Prof. Dr. Vishalache Balakrishnan. Ladies and gentlemen, for your information, Professor Dr. Vishalache Balakrishnan is a distinguished scholar in the field of service learning and a key initiator of service learning initiatives at the international level. She is currently attached to the Department of Educational Foundations and Humanities of Education Foundations and Humanities at the Faculty of Education, University of Malaya. She is the director of the Center for Research in International and Comparative Education, CRISE, University Malaya. She completed her postdoctoral studies in inclusive and critical educational psychology at the University of Waikato, New Zealand, and obtained her Doctor of Philosophy in Education from Victoria, University of Wellington, New Zealand. With over 39 years of experience in education, her expertise lies particularly in moral and citizenship education. She began her career as an English language teacher in a secondary school before moving into the fields of social sciences and later the humanities of education. As a university professor, she has led numerous educational and humanities research initiatives in service learning, promoting multidisciplinary collaboration within universities Malaysia, across Malaysia, and internationally. Passionate about the humanities and lifelong learning, Professor Vishal has been invited to many countries to share her research and innovative ideas, particularly in experiential learning and the development of holistic individual. Beyond her academic responsibility, she is deeply committed to promoting multicultural understanding and advancements with strong interest in areas that involve critical analysis, deductive reasoning, scientific inquiry, and spiritual. So, Prof. Dr. Vishal Aceh, I believe that our audience are eager to hear more about your sharing on this topic. All right, henceforth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Ho. Very good morning, good day to everyone here. And thank you for inviting me, Iba, for this special Komad event. It's nice to be back here. I did my teacher's training in Maktab Perguruan Lembah Pantai in 1988. I think any of the youngest people here have not been born. So it's nice to be back in the library. This was the library in 1988 as well. So when I was invited and I was looking at the blueprint 2026, 2035, I was also thinking about what's happening globally, and especially after COVID-19. So there's a lot of reports and research done on human flourishing education, which unfortunately Malaysia is not part of it. Many developed nations like Iceland, UK, and even Singapore is part of it. And the main focus is definitely on character formation. So now in line with what we are talking about, character formation and wanting Malaysian typical student, being able to stand locally and globally, I thought this will be the best topic for first. So the main thing here.
So, Prof, okay, human flourishing education is much spoken about in many developed countries, right? So can you share how you got interested in human flourishing education?
Okay. So as Madam Ho has already mentioned, I started as a language teacher, but I grew up in a very multicultural, spiritual area, in a church, in a mosque. All of you can know that I'm actually mixed ethnic, mixed culture and all that. So growing in such a situation and coming from missionary school, I realized that most of our teachers were actually looking at how we can be the best in what we want. So when I started teaching and I saw the Rukun Negara, I saw the Falsafah Pendidikan Kebangsaan, I was like, yes, this is what I've been doing all the while. But unfortunately, due to globalization, due to a lot of circumstances, we started trying to fit into what the global nation wanted, like, economy, preparing our students for workforce. Even now we are doing that, like in the university, we always make sure we do a research on how our students, our graduates have got into the workforce, how many of them happy in the workforce, how many of them starting their own business and things like that. So actually, when these few countries started to sing about human flourishing, and I said, that is what we actually want, and it's what our Falsafah Pendidikan Kebangsaan talked about, the jari, jasmani, emosi, rohani, and intellect. But why is it that we have started very long ago, but it's not working? So if you look at the philosophy of human flourishing, I had the opportunity to go to Greece and, we where Aristotelian schools were and all that, and they all know that Socrates, we talked a lot about Socrates, inquiry learning and things like that. He never gave any talk beyond 15 minutes. But look at us, even today's talk is about 1 hour, but I hope it keeps people's interest on. Psychologically, when I did my postdoc on inclusive education, critical education psychology, I think most of our students would want to have more than the knowledge. And they've got to understand that knowledge can be obtained from anywhere now. lecturers or even parents or even society are not just the sole knowledge givers, okay? Coming from a Chinese parentage, one side, I realized during Confucius time, teachers are everything. Teachers are the knowledge givers. And even I think those of you who go to like Hafiz schools or Islamic schools, the Ustad is the one to give everything. But now we realize it's changing, the digital world. And are we keeping up to that? So it is important that we understand that when we talk about human flourishing, it's actually the ability to be healthy, internal and external. So as I'm growing, I wouldn't say older, I'll say more senior, maybe a bit more than all these young people who are watching me now. You want to be healthy in and out. Okay? So I think one of the things about flourishing is you flourish within. And then because we are human, we have this thing called akal fikiran. So we look up. We look up at God. We look up at nature, because the other day my international student said, so is there a God? Because in China, they don't talk about God. They talk about self-discipline. And in New Zealand, where I did both my postdoc and my PhD, talking about religion is taboo, because not everybody has religion. But they talk about spirituality. They talk about the self-discipline that you have within. And a lot of us, we get this from the religion or from the culture that we come in. So it is important that we understand why is human flourishing important. It promotes growth, development. I did many research on growth and development. There are two differences between this. And holistic well-being. So now with our new blueprint where it talks about insan sejahtera, I think holistic well-being is what we are looking at. Individual level and our population level. Sometimes I used to wonder, how can I be not well, but I go and teach my students and ask them to be well? So for me, it's very important for helping experiential learning to have her wisdom, because if I have it, then I'm able to share with it. But you should understand that not everybody can have what we have, because we are all made up of different DNA and things like that. So it is important to understand the conditions to enable human flourishing, which will promote safety and security in people's life. And we know this includes many stuff like health, economic, community, financial, political, and more. So in line with this, we have to link it with what we are all doing, educators at the formal, informal level. And this is actually from UNESCO, Pillars of Education. And I always ask educators, I always ask teachers, do you all know that education is not just to know something, to grad, to get a good job, to get married, to get children? That is natural. Everybody, animals also do that. But we have this notion of learning to live together and learning to be, right? Be human beings. So that is where we are different from other flora and fauna in the human life. So why do we need this? As I told you just now, it is the promotion for growth, development, and holistic well-being. We need to talk about holistic well-being. We've got doctors recently who, passed away. We've got a lot of people who work so hard. We've got engineers who become Grab drivers. I met an engineer who became Grab driver and said, I'm the boss of my life and I'm so happy. I've had a teacher teaching in a private school, in a marginalized students area who said, I'm happy now. I get to see the sun. I get to see the laughter of my students. Okay. So it serves as a moral basis for what is being human, right? And maybe we can go on to the next part of our discussion.
So, Prof, you spoke about shared humanity which serve everyone's interest and how important it is to all humans' life, especially related to education in Malaysian classroom.
Okay. Actually, I put out this picture for everybody to reflect upon. Okay. When you talk about flourishing, the basic word is flower. We know flowers in any situation, unless they didn't get water or sunlight, they do not bloom. Okay. So if you look at the picture that I put across, we've got flowers growing in a very taken care place. We've got flowers growing in gardens, but also got flowers going on in cracks. And today when I was coming out from my home, there was this gate and this flower was trying to come out from under the gate. see how much survival it was having. So it is important that when we talk about flourishment, when we talk about developing and helping students grow, it is to look into every student that we have, not just students from, students who listen to us. Because, whenever I go for teaching prep, when I have young students asking their students questions, they always expect answers which are already in their head. And I think this mindset got decayed because every student come from different backgrounds. And these different backgrounds will give them different cultural experiences. So it is important that we make sure that every student is able to flourish at their own ability.
All right. Doctor, can you share how character formation can be developed in our students?
Okay. I have this picture. So I think a lot of you will be wondering, why did I put the lotus there? Okay. Recently, I also saw a show where a boy is from a very marginalized group, and his father said, in order for my children, my generation to grow up, I had to move away from the village. It was a big action he took. He left his friends, he left his comfort, basically because he know that if his children grew up in the same environment that he grew up, then chances of the children developing and growing might be lesser. So basically, if you all understand the lotus, okay? Don't look at it from a spiritual, but just look at it from a scientific perspective. The lotus usually grows in dirty, muddy water. But the moment it blooms, it becomes something pure, something beautiful,
Yes.
and it will wither. Okay, so we know all flowers, so as long as we live, we die, right? But in order for us to flourish, to have a character, we need a lot of other components. And basically, it doesn't matter where you're growing from, it's where you're heading towards. And that's where we come in as educators, as parents, as society, to help inject, and if you are looking at what's happening in our society, maybe in Malaysia, you'll realize students who had a good foundation from their grandparents who are educated, they become activists now, they become people who can lead. And we realize that people who came from a background who are like, farmers, or, we had estate workers. So that's why we have this policy where we need a graduate in every family. I think our government has that policy. Why? Basically, my generation, we have 3 teachers. And my generation had been up and down. So there were times when my grandfather was killed by the communists, and the whole family became poor straight away because, the servants looted the house and everybody was so confused. And so what happened was, my mother's advice, my late mother's advice is, have the education and you will survive anywhere. So that is what I give my students as well, And this education should be holistic education, like as I mentioned just now. Is flourishing. It's being able to face, just now when I showed the picture, you are grounded, but yet you can go anywhere in the world. So that's what in 2010, when I went to Indonesia for a keynote, they talk a lot about unity in diversity, but they also talk a lot about localization, being local, but being able to stand tall with others. So that's very important for character formation.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Okay, next, in line with the latest 2026 to 2035 Ministry of Education blueprint, there is a need to understand and utilize the importance of character formation in the Insan Sejahtera through education for all. So what are your suggestions to ensure Insan Sejahtera becomes a reality?
Thank you for the great question. I think this is what a lot of us are looking forward to. We don't want to hear things like, old wine in new bottle or kulit saja ubah, because I used to write textbooks and, sometimes the editors don't know that we are writers and they say, apa yang baru? What is new? And, some of them, they'll say, sama je, kulit dia je ubah. So we don't want that thing, because when we talk about transformation and evolution, it's not just the changing of kulit, but it's also what we have, the actual gist. So you can see, for those of you, I'm sure you can download the Rancangan Pendidikan Malaysia 2026-2035. The main focus is, of course, insan sejahtera. Okay, sometimes when you translate language, I was trying to look at what is sejahtera in English. It's a very difficult term. You know, you can talk about well-being, you can talk about prosperity, but to get that word sejahtera, and we've got some of my gurus, maybe I wouldn't want to mention the name now, but there are people who are trying to merungkaikan, to try to explore what is this sejahtera. And if you look at it, sejahtera is actually holistic. And again, where we're coming back to falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, which is the holistic component of a student. So there are 5 components here. I mean, we have our own passion, but we also must make sure that we are in line with what's going on in the education system. So we can see that the 5 main component is beradab, berilmu, berkemahiran, berdaya tahan, and berkeyakinan. For me, I can see it as a holistic thing, and with the current digital era, we can see that resilient, which is berdaya tahan, is one of the most important thing. How many of you can just X off when you see a pornography and you're doing your assignment? I always ask these questions to the students, okay? Okay, maybe you're curious, but at times you realize that this can come later. You know, I have different things. So how do you focus your mindset? How can you make sure that if there's any challenges around, you know, there might be deaths in the family, there might be commotions, parents might be getting divorced, society might be, you know, like what's happening now, we see a lot of war going on. So how can we focus? So that's why I feel you first have to go inward. Once we can build this child with resilience, then the confidence comes in. And of course, beradab. I think adab is one of the most important thing in our Eastern culture, right? So any tourist comes to Malaysia and say, hey, y'all are very nice people, you know. I just asked somebody for direction, but this student took me all the way there. I've never seen a society like this. So that is us, Malaysians, beradab. And of course, ilmu. Without ilmu, we can't go far. But this ilmu can come in many ways. And for me, experiential is one of the most important ways. You know, you can learn everything in a book, but if you do not have the experience, then we have in Malay, right? Cakap tak serupa bikin, right? We are talking about everything. When it comes to real action, you're not actually doing that. And you need the kemahiran, right? When I go and do sulam, service learning with my students, and some anak yatim, you know, often children ask me, how can I focus? You know, there's so many children and everybody, and you know what's happening at home. I don't know where's my mother, where's my father. So I said, what do you want now? I want to study. So if you want to study, you must learn to have that kemahiran. And that's where religion comes in. You know, religion helps you to become, you all are fasting now. I think the last 10 days, I'm actually doing my second PhD on religiosity and common sense, you know. Yesterday I had a lot of my friends. We did a service learning project in Library, and they all had gastric and they couldn't make it. So I said, sometimes common sense. Will it help? Can you do something? So all these will come in your kemahiran. So as I told you, the anak yatim, and you all can try this out as well. You know, if you're confused, go out, physical, run, swim, do something, and then your mind becomes calm. Or if you're just sitting and you have to do your assignment and say one of your name is Amir, just tell yourself, Amir is great, Amir will finish. That positive psychology comes back to human flourishing, because our mind can go wandering, but how do we actually bring back? And again, it might work for me, it might work for you, but it might not work for many people. So this kemahiran has to be built. Look at how sports people, there are 2 sports boys in my home, and I know how happy they are when they win, and how terrible the whole house is when they lose. So we have to keep moving and say, hey, this is just part of life, you know?
Correct.
This is just part of life, and you can go on, but it has to come from within. So I think this is a very good program that we're going to have, and with character formation, it's definitely going to support each and every one of us. However, we need certain models to actually help educators, parents, society, students, to help ourselves and to help in the teaching profession. And this is where I have been, it's not searching, but part of it, and I think the 3H model, I'm not sure if you all have heard about the 3H model, is something very, very important.
Prof, you mentioned the 3H model to be explored at teachers training and to be implemented on all levels of teaching. So can you please further explain this model and its importance for our education system?
Okay, so basically H, right? 3H. So it's the head. Okay, and when we talk about the head, it's the cognition. So that's why I did law halfway, and after that I didn't continue because I thought I was more passionate about this. But I might continue after I retire because I've got friends who are doctors who are lawyers now. Not because they want to be lawyers, but because they want to help people. You know, when you have the law in hand, you can actually help people about human rights and things like that. So in law, if you are able to prove that a person who did wrong did not have his actus reus and his mens rea, which means his cognition and his action did not go in part, a murder can turn into manslaughter. Okay, so it's very important. I know some of you all find it difficult. It's law jargon words, but the head, okay, the head which has vision. I think every educator need to have a vision, okay, because if you don't have vision, like I'm happy because when my students come to me and I get excited, like you said, I look young because I'm excited when I see all students. You know, we talk about character formation. You want to form, you want to develop, you want to help, and they come from different backgrounds. That's the best part. So the head, the vision, and then you have the heart. I think for me personally, this is the most important thing. Before coming to Lembah Pantai, I had to go for my medical tests. And the doctor was the first one because I used to donate blood. And the doctor kind of asked me, why don't you become a doctor? You know, you can help a lot of people. But I said, in order for you to become a doctor, I don't know how I was so daring. Sometimes I get ideas, God knows from where. I said, in order for a person to become a doctor, you need a teacher to teach you. So let me be that teacher. You know, without teachers, like I think on the 8th of March, we had Women's Day. And I received these phrases from Africa. It was, you know, sometimes Africa, they are very based on community. So they said, half the world is made up of women, and the other half is their children. So that's so true. If there's no women, men and boys will not be there, right? So I think the passion for teaching is so important. And this passion shouldn't be like, I want my promotion, I want to be senior. It's not that. It's just building, you know, you want to teach because you want to educate, and we go by what we are having, because every country has its own philosophy, and we have Falsafah Pendidikan Kebangsaan. We have our Rukun Negara for harmony and perpaduan and things like that. So our heart should be there. And I tell a lot of teachers, if your heart is not there, then go and try doing something else. Because as long as, you know, this entire rancangan pendidikan, this entire thing, if your heart is not there, it's hard to move. And even your students will know when they come to class. You know, I used to be a discipline teacher my last 5 years before I left for the university. I used to tell my students, I know you're working. I know the school is a playground for you. I know the school is a place for you to have fun. But please at least respect when I come in to teach moral or when I come in to teach English. So at least what they will do, they won't disturb each other, because they know teacher is here to care for me. And you know, these are the students, when I see them today, they are with children. And you know, I used to be a discipline teacher as well. So strict. I used to cane. Okay? Because, you know, discipline teachers have a letter to cane. I met a student who was working with his family, and he was smoking, and he quickly put his hand at the back. So you see, habits form, you know, that they form when they are young. Yeah. It becomes even, I said, don't have to put to the back, but look at your child beside you. You think it's right for him. So I say, you don't have to be scared of me, kind of thing like that. So I think the passion is so important. And of course, the most important thing is hence the action. Okay? Without action, everything seems to be nice, but in reality, it's just stagnant. It's not moving. And that's what we hope to get from our future teachers, from society, action from your own part. And do something that you're passionate. Like I'm passionate about kebajikan, about service learning. We have Wall of Kindness in the university where people come. They're so happy because I've done that my entire life. And it gives me a lot of sanity, a lot of inspiration to go on actually. So see what is close to you. And having experiential learning is one of the best. And I was so happy when there were no exams in primary school, because teachers can bring out, if you go overseas, you go summertime, children will be here, children will be there. I was in Coimbatore, India, and the primary kids were in this forest museum. Words were hard to explain. Teacher was telling out the word, but they just tell, because that experience is going to take them a long, long way. Yeah. So I think this 3H model, currently I'm working with, Kenya, headmasters, India, principal. So I hope Malaysia also look into It's not that we don't have. Malaysia has the best education system. In the 80s, South Korea came to benchmark on what we are doing. Indonesia came to benchmark on our Sulam. And now they're all doing it based on what they can do. But we are also progressing, and we need to be a bit more critical about what we are doing. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Okay, you have been in the education profession for almost 4 decades. Okay, what are some of your concerns for the education in our Malaysian school?
Okay, I think as I mentioned before, it shouldn't be just within the 4 walls of the classroom. One very good example is, I'm into moral education, the syllabus, textbook writing, assessment. We were the first ones who came up with HOTS in SPM exam. And the people who complained, even right up to parliament, were the teachers. The teachers were giving teknik menjawab soalan. Because in morality, in life, you have choices. And what are the choices you make depends on, the culture, the perlembagaan, and what is within the boundary of the country. So a student can do certain things, but it depends on the environment that they are from. So these teachers who are so used to, there is a saying where you put in the meat, you get out the sausage. You put in the meat, you get out the sausage. That's not what we want. We want to put in the meat. We want flaws. We want creativity. We want the meat to come out as it is because they're happy as what they are. And we want different things. So that's where creativity. And we talk a lot. I think from my time, we talk about KBKK. Now we talk about 21st century, and we talk about the 5 C's, the 6 C's, we talk about SDG. So there's a lot of things going on. So much so that I think teachers and lecturers are also overwhelmed. You're also overwhelmed as students, and society will follow. Okay, they are happy as long as their children develop. And in fact, whenever I go overseas, and they know that I'm a professor, they ask, you want your students to be smart or you want your students to be happy? Even taxi drivers will ask me. And this gives me a lot of questions. They are immigrants. They're immigrants from Middle East to America. And they ask me such questions. They said, we did all our studies, we have all our things, but we were not happy in our country. So we come here, it's a different country, but we're happy because we're able to give the children what they want. So end of the day is, what do we want out of our students? That's something so crucial. And as I said, teach students to look inward, upward, outward. We are always teaching students to look outward. Dia ni pandai tau, you pun kena jadi pandai. Sometimes 2 children in the same house, same parents, are totally different. And are we going to say, abang kamu pandai, you pun kena jadi pandai? No, they have different skills. And that's why when we talk about flourishing, they sometimes, some flowers bloom very fast. Some flowers bloom very late. Some flowers don't bloom at all.
Yeah.
Some flowers just wither and die. So how are we going to help all these as educators, as society, as parents? I've got a friend whose grandchild is slightly mongoloid. You all know mongoloid, right? Down syndrome. The mother knows because she was a teacher. But her daughter, it's a granddaughter, refused to accept. it's in denial. So when I have my group of WhatsApp friends who are teachers, and they said, this is exactly what's happening in school. Because parents are in denial that their children are special children. So when you kind of admit, then you can do a lot of things, because we have lots of way of doing it. But we are in denial, and then we force the child to go through the system, which is, I think, a big pain for them. And at the end of it, the children become victims of this entire system. So I think these are some of the things that we need to develop, we need to look at. And as I told you earlier, the teacher becomes the prime minister in the classroom. This has to be remembered. You have all the policy, you have all the system, but you are the person in charge. In spite of, I have my curriculum, I have my syllabus, I have my assignments. The moment your students understand, this is what I'm coming to school, this is my capability, this is how much I can do. Teacher, thank you for bringing me beyond this. I think that is what is needed. And this is one of the biggest challenge that each of us have to face every time we have a group of students.
Okay, thank you, Professor Dr. Vishlache, for the insightful sharing on human flourishing in education. Your presentations remind us that education is not only academic in achievement, but about nurturing the holistic development of every learner. The concept of human flourishing highlight the importance of enabling students to grow intellectually, emotionally, socially, and morally. This aligns closely with the principle of education for all, where every learner, regardless of background or ability, deserve access to inclusive and meaningful learning opportunities. Your sharing also resonates with the aspirations of the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2026 to 2035, which emphasizes the development of insan sejahtera through character formation and inclusive educations. And the 3H model, head, heart, and hands, further remind us that the education must integrate knowledge, values, and action in order to nurture balanced individuals. Once again, thank you, Prof, for your inspiring sharing. And thank you to everyone who joined us in this colloquium. So we hope today's sessions has provided valuable insights on how education can empower every learner to flourish. So ladies and gentlemen, with a heavy heart, I must inform you that we have come to the end of this series. Personally, I have learned so much from this sharing, and I hope you do too, okay? Should you have any questions, do drop them in the comment box. We will attend to them when the time permits. Okay, Prof, we have one question from audience. You mentioned an analogy about flower and how it grows and flourish. Okay, what advice do you have for our young teachers to flourish and maintain flourishing or growing as a teachers?
Okay, that's a very nice question, and I can relate it back to my own experience of being an English language teacher. So I'm from a convent school, so everybody in a convent school speaks English. And then I did my training in Maktab Perguruan Lembah Pantai. It was closed down. We went to Maktab Perguruan Ilmu Khas. And then my training was in, my internship was in Methodist Girls' School. And it's also a missionary school. So everybody speaks English. Perfect. Perfect life, perfect growing up, perfect. Everything was perfect. And then suddenly I get my posting, which is SMJK Triang in Pahang. So that was the first time I'm looking at a map. Being a person from Para, a city girl, coming to KL and going to Triang. And I said, okay, it looks like a town school. So my first experience going to Pahang and going to this school. And I was given Form 1 to teach English and moral. Moral is fine because, we can use a lot of explanation, pictures. But English, they didn't speak English. They didn't speak Malay. They only spoke Mandarin.
Right.
So until now, I can, know words in Mandarin, but like bad words, because I was also a discipline teacher there. So you have to say, why are you longkaiing here? Go back to class. Things like longkai,
Alright.
the basic words I had to learn. But I think to flourish, especially as teachers, we always need to keep our petal open and some sponge inside the petal. I'm giving some symbolic. If your sponge is full, like if I say, hey, I'm trained here, and I'm from a teacher training going to secondary school. We were in PSMPI. So most of the people there were graduates. So they were like, hey, you're just from teachers training. You go and do all the sports thing. You go and do this. You go and do that. No, we didn't have degree. We only have certificates at that time. Okay.
Wow.
So it's important that every teacher have their petal open. Of course, when you want to take a break, then you can close your petal and go and do other things. Have your petal open and make sure you have an empty glass, as some people will say. Or for me, it's like a dry sponge, because everything that comes, and then you will need to see, does this fit into our system? Does this fit into our culture? Because we also have teachers, you get knowledge from all over the world, right? You say, if it can happen in Finland, why cannot it happen here? It cannot happen here because we are multicultural. They are monocultural. And now they are facing a lot of issues as well. They are facing issues because a lot of immigrants are going there. And I've spoke to some of the minorities who are there who find it, oh my God, you don't know what's happening here. It's only when you are in a certain country you understand. Things are always looking greener on the other side. But as long as we are teachers, we have to get this excitement. Hey, I'm going to get this new group of students. What kind of culture they come from? What kind of background they're coming from? And we have to understand if they are Melayu or China or India, they're the same. No, they're not. Even within Melayu, you have inter and intra differences. Indians, all the more, different ethnic group. And Chinese, right? In one Chinese family, do you know they might be speaking 3 or 4 dialects? And of course with Mandarin as well. So many people, many students, many teachers don't understand this. So as I said, the analogy of the flower, always keep your flower open. Always be thirsty for knowledge, competence, and that. I always tell my students this. The moment you stop studying and you get your scroll, you start complaining. So when I go and give talks in schools, I say, okay, we have all this now. You have creativity, you have all your experience. What can we do from that? And if we go on that, that is human flourishing, because we are looking at the positive aspect of life.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Once again, on behalf of Institute of Teacher Education International Language Campus, IGBA, thank you, Prof. Dr. Vishalachek Balakrishnan, for your time today. So our gratitude also goes to our technical team and all of our viewers. That will be all for now. Please do not forget to watch our next webinar sessions. Till then, jumpa lagi. See you soon. Bye.